Captain, incoming message.
It was the dawn of the third age of mankind.
Groovy.
Hi-ho. This is me, Kermit the Frog.
Hello there.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
Not a great plan.
Oh, for crying out loud.
Program complete. Enter when ready.
Let's see what's out there. Engage.
Hey there, we're those Sci-Fi guys. This is those Sci-Fi guys show. Just system lives, super jobs, but a whole lot of love for science fiction and the fun that comes with. We are your hosts. I am Pia Smooth McKay. Erin Bragh dealing with me. Classic Lucky Irish all night tonight, and spinning the heat, popping the seats until the next day. Bad luck.
And I'm his partner, a legendary DTO Cavman, and we are happy to come to you on St. Patrick's Day.
Should I just have the music playing in the background? Like, just keep it going?
It would, that in theory, that would be cool, but it kind of drowns you out just a tad.
Just a tad. I even had it on 6. How about now? No? Still a little drowned out? Well, it doesn't matter. Anyway, yes, what a fine St. Patrick's Day it is to everyone involved. Wishing you and yours a truly wonderful, happy, and safe St. Patrick's Day. DT, I don't know if I brought this up before, but I never done shit for St. Patrick's Day in my entire life. I was in one St. Patrick's Day parade in Denver when I was 5. It was cold as hell, like freezing. For Channel 31, we were on their float, and we had to wear these shirts that they fit you as a kid, but because it was so cold, we had to wear our winter coats. And so they had to stuff us into those shirts like sausages. So
kind of like the Halloween costumes when it's a random 40-degree Halloween.
Oh my gosh, yes. Oh, in Denver there were blizzards during Halloween, so
yeah.
I like but
well, for me, St. Patrick's Day, family-wise, has always been, at least back here in when I was back here in Massachusetts, was usually my father putting on records and then later CDs of classic Irish music like the Irish Rovers, the Clancy Brothers, the Dubliners, Bing Crosby and the like. No, more of the folk singers, less of the
yeah.
The Wolf Tones
the rebel. They were rebel music.
Yes. Well, I mean, when you're named the Wolf Tones, that would imply something for those who know Irish history. But yes, I found the Wolf Tones later, and my family was familiar with them, of course. But like most of the music they played was amongst the more the less rebel and more the folk singing, the ballads, not so much the rebel songs, but my grandmother always used to have corned beef and cabbage, and sometimes we'd go over to my grandparents, sometimes the whole clan would gather, but then I went off to school and the army, and in college, of course, people just went out on St. Patrick's Day and celebrated. And when you go to a Catholic school,
that's
Catholic
right.
school in the Northeast, there were quite a lot of Irish, kids with really Irish names. I knew tons of Siobhans and Roisin's and
any from Ireland.
Actually, yes, there were two. There were 2 runners on the track team named Roisin. and they were from Ireland. Our half of our track team came from Ireland, actually, men and women. I took an Irish history course in school. It really helped dispel some of the stereotypes or explain things more to me. And, I started digging deeper into it. But, and I would carry my own tradition myself as I would go through the army. Invariably some places, sometimes there might be a St. Patrick's Day celebration or whatnot, or maybe end up at a pub somewhere. But usually mine revolved around building up a lot of Irish music, and I started expanding with things like Shillelagh Law and of the newer bands. I got into the Wolf Tones, the Pogues a bit, pulling a few here and there from some various different bands. But I really started to sink my teeth into the newer Irish music, Gaelic Storm, Shillelagh Law, and the High Kings. And Gaelic Storm, of course, for those who are unfamiliar with them, they're a circus band.
No, from Titanic.
Yeah, that sounded like a circus. They were the Irish band playing in the party in the bowels of the ship when Rose and Jack escaped the ultra stuffy party, and you want to go to a real party? But the original members of Gaelic Storm were the band playing in the bowels of the ship, and so that kind of helped get them out there. And they've been traveling for 20 plus years playing music. Really fun, upbeat. They're not mostly traditional music. They're a lot of, Irish fun music. Lead singer's Irish, but then I got hooked on the High Kings, who are definitely more of a traditional ballad and some rebel music, but also a lot of really good original music. But their bread and butter came up being traditional music. I've also liked Celtic Thunder a little, and they were kind of formed as an Irish boy band. But they were formed that way, aimed a bit at doing. They still did traditional music, but they're a group of, they were handsome young Irish guys singing. But lately, I've really settled into my niche of being home, and then my whole family, my dad's side of the family, getting together and doing a St. Patrick's Day celebration. And, corned beef and cabbage, the Irish music playing, everybody dressed in green. But it's just another excuse for the family to get together and have a meal together. But my uncle has taken over cooking using my grandmother's recipe. So it's just kind of very big. It's been good. It's been very fun and whatnot. We know a local Irish store that, where you can get authentic Irish clothing like Erin sweaters and whatnot. But you can also get fresh Irish soda bread, which is delivered there every day from an Irish bakery. And, we bring those and it's just a lot of fun. We've really taken into turning it into a bit of a weekend. My daughter's birthday is the same weekend as St. Patrick's Day, and
it's right around it, yeah.
And usually also the High Kings and or Gaelic Storm come through the area. So 3 years in a row, I've gone to see at least the High Kings on St. Patrick's Day weekend. And let me tell you, especially the closer you get to the city of Boston around the St. Patrick's Day weekend, and going to see like true blue Irish bands, it is an experience that you can't just watch on TV or listen over the radio. You have to feel it. So
there is
the
something
downside,
about traditional Irish music / Irish inspired music, Celtic music.
Exactly.
That is just it. In person, it is awe-encompassing.
Yeah, whether it's an old Irish ballad or some new song using traditional Irish instruments and Irish lilting and other singing, it there's a lot of focus on the storytelling, playing the instrument well, and good singing, right? The things that you really want out of music, whether there's flash and, it's more substance over flash, but the good ones like Gaelic Storm is very raucous. They're usually very up. They don't do a ton of ballads. They're really very beat. They have some silly songs. They have some fun songs. They do a few, slower songs, but not as much. High Kings, they do the ballads that will break your hearts, and they'll have some upbeat songs and do traditional songs that everybody's up stamping their feet, clapping their hands, singing along, and they want you to sing along, even though all four members of Gaelic Storm or the High King, excuse me, are some of the best vocalists I've ever heard live, and the way they harmonize together they're the best live shows I've ever seen.
Nice. So you went this weekend.
Yes. So Friday night, I took my wife and daughter to see the headline being the High Kings, and the opener is Mary Black, who is a very accomplished Irish folk singer from whose big days were in the 80s and early 90s, and they've been touring with her for the last couple for about 6 to 8 weeks. They toured together, and her band is extremely accomplished musicians. I mean, they clearly look like they've been together a long time. Okay, they're all older looking, but highly efficient, extremely talented musicians. She's a gifted vocalist, but her music there is the Irish flavor. There's also some Irish themes to it, but it's also a little like 80s, 90s easy listening, saxophone. I mean, it was good. Don't get me wrong. It's just the last 2 years in a row over the St. Patrick's Day weekend, I've gotten to see Gaelic Storm and the High Kings. So, it was just a change. They weren't touring together this year. This year, at least through the spring, Gaelic Storm is touring with Zach Brown Band. So that's pretty cool. The story is that they go like back 15 years with the Zach Brown Band. So they've been Zach Brown's actually been wearing Gaelic Storm shirts on tour for the last couple of months. It's actually been pretty neat to see. But
nice.
I was a little disappointed they weren't doing I'm not gonna lie, I was very disappointed they weren't doing what they call the Mighty Tour again, because I think they're a great pairing. One's a very lively, fun, kind of upbeat band, and the other one's like you're talking like true, blue, legit, like Irish balladeers who also know how to put on a fantastic show.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll admit it was definitely kind of lower energy the first half of the show. All right. And the people who knew Mary Black's music cheered, clapped. She got a nice applause. There were some people who sang along with her more popular songs. And then she finished, and as soon as High Kings came on, like as soon as they announced, the whole place cheered. I mean, the whole place started shaking, clapping, cheering, and then they immediately go right into, real upbeat song where they're not even playing their instruments yet. They just go walk to the mic. They start stamping their feet, clapping their hands, and start a cappella before they go into a pretty upbeat song. And then they stayed like up for like 3 straight songs, just getting the crowd on their feet, stamping, clapping, singing, just 3 straight banger, bang, bang, bang. And then they dropped in the ballads where people are like riveted and listening. they drop into, Wild Mountain Time, which is a lovely Scottish folk song, but, but that's one that people will sing along because it's just a very beautiful song.
Right.
And then, they're up, you're doing, and then they're doing some of their own original stuff. Their upbeat song, Chasing Rainbows, which is basically about a guy and a girl kind of chasing down the night, bar to bar, event to event, not a care in the world, just being out together, kind of painting the town different colors, that kind of stuff. They really know how to keep a show moving. And with some of the traditional music that people grew up singing, the rebel songs, the protest songs, even the drinking songs, they're one of their first big hits, popular hits, is called the Irish Pub Song. And it's basically, the line is, wherever you go around the world, you find an Irish pub. And I tell you, I have drank at Irish pubs in other parts of the world. So,
Saudi?
No.
Uh,
Though I did have
found the
a
loophole.
very nice I did have a very nice St. Patrick's Day celebration in Saudi.
Yeah. Well, they could do that, but
Well, the U.S. consulate hosted something, so you could celebrate there. Anyway,
Yeah.
it was a fantastic experience. Like, we left high, on the vibes. Everybody was in a great mood. Nobody was, even the people who had been drinking were still very sane, and nobody was out of hand. There were kids in the audience, and then my daughter wanted another T-shirt. We got a T-shirt. We got in line, and they all, and you could go up and they'll sign it. And I just threw out there that it's my daughter's birthday this weekend, and then one by one, as they signed it, they wished her a happy birthday. One of them gave her a high five. Another one said, "Oh, I hope he's spoiling you." I'm like, "Well, she's at the concert." But
man, this is my big stretch. Come on now.
No, I mean, we did.
I know. I'm just kidding.
I wouldn't say we spoiled her, but she had a nice birthday. That's what I'm saying.
Well, that goes without saying.
And then the next day, we're at the family St. Patrick's Day party, and everybody's wearing green and having the corned beef and sharing stories, and just, it was a nice time, and that's what you want for these kinds of things, So it's been a very long weekend, but it was
go ahead.
worth it. It was rewarding, and anytime I get to go see like one of these Irish bands, it just breaks through whatever malaise or shit week, or even when I'm not feeling 100%. My wife was smoked by the end of the week, and she was kind of droopy during the first act. But when the High Kings came on, boom, on her feet, lit up like a Christmas tree, excited. It just changed the energy of the room. You could feel it. It was physical. You could feel it in the air, and that's how it's a great performance, right? So, and I tell you, Irish music, the story, the different types of music. I mean, they use Irish styles of music and flutes and the pipes and the drums so well in TV and movies that it's become very infectious and a very nice thread of the American culture too. Like, look what happened when The Departed came out, and Shipping Up to Boston became a big thing. And then the next thing you know, I'm watching Wicked Tuna episodes, and like there's like this like kind of like Ship It Up to Boston kind of music they play in the background with all these, North Shore, Massachusetts fishermen. And then I'm watching the TV show Rizzoli and Isles, which is about an Italian cop from Boston. And the music is like very much a Dropkick Murphys. It very much sounds like it was inspired by Shipping Up to Boston. So you've got this feel, this theme that kind of goes with it. Like Boston almost gets this like real Irish, theme music, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's from Southie, But I mean, look, they even did it with Miles O'Brien and then Next Generation and Deep Space Nine. His fade out music in what you leave behind was the Minstrel Boy.
Before we go any further into that technical subject, I wanted to talk a little bit about Irish significance in America. It's not going to take long.
No. I was thoroughly enjoying that sip of this local red Irish ale. This is like a small batch from a local brewery that has made. It's called Ireland Forever Ale, Irish Red Ale. It is the best Irish beer that I've bought local. It is fantastic, and it's very hard to get. Like if you don't get it, like a couple weeks, like as soon as it comes in, like 2 weeks before St. Patrick's Day, you ain't finding it for another year.
No.
So
yeah.
So as soon as I go in, I buy every.
Hold that up to the camera, sir. Let me see it again.
It's from Berkshire Brewing Company, out
Okay.
central Massachusetts. So
Nice.
or actually,
I like
western
it.
Massachusetts. Yeah. It's also got a great label. But go ahead, my friend. That's good.
Oh, what the fuck? What the fuck?
Are you getting beamed up by aliens?
That light just turned on randomly. What the hell is happening today? That light wasn't even activated. It wasn't even activated. The power light wasn't even on, and it was on.
Look, buddy, it's me. I'm sorry. It was going to be an April Fool's Day joke, but the puck wedgie I sent you got there a little early.
Fuck me, dude. I don't know what's happening today.
You clearly stepped on a leprechaun.
Holy shit! I must have done
The Fey folk
something.
are after you.
I must have neglected like turning around and tapping my nose whenever, or tipping my cap whenever a gust of wind or like spun in a circle behind me or something.
You didn't put the pennies back in the fairy garden.
I put new ones in. Like
I bet you one was Canadian.
I made sure that, well, it's possible, but I hope not. So anyway, I just wanted to say, like, there's an interesting thing when it comes to, and Italians can apply to this too. In a certain circumstance.
That's the other side.
I know. Well,
that's mom's side.
Yeah, for you, yes. It's funny because, out of all of the, well, okay, I don't want to be that general, but the impact of the Irish immigration and the Italian immigration, Italians just hang on the side with this. It's cool. I'm being complimentary with you too. So with the Irish immigration, the impact that it's had on the American culture has been indelible. And the question is, it's like, out of all of the European immigrants that have come here over the last like 250 years, why is it that the Irish are so prominent, right? Like, how is it that so many people of European descent identify as being of Irish heritage? Why is it so prevalent that way?
It's the family.
I'm going to tell you.
I had the answer.
I know you had the answer, but the survey was done, and really what it was saying was, people were saying, well, it was just important in the family to share that heritage with each generation that went down, and to share
Sure.
the stories of what Irish heritage had, the folklore, the songs, the
you had to.
music,
They couldn't write anything down.
they had a
They
hard
kept
time
getting
doing that
oppressed.
at first. Yes, absolutely. And to give a little bit of an example of the Irish development, I'm not going to say I am a key example here, but I am 7th generation Irish in America. Okay. I am but the second person in my entire lineage of my surname to be able to go to college out of 7 generations, my father being the first. My cousins and others have been able to continue said tradition, but
Sure.
that being said, 7 generations it took to get to that point, to be able, 6 generations, let's say. But the American, well, I also know that my ancestors didn't exactly make good decisions. So, so if you don't
Many
make good
people's
decisions,
ancestors didn't make good decisions. That's how they ended up in America in the first place.
well, hold on, that's a good decision. It's once you get here if you make the right decisions. That's the key. So
And
the
all
American
I know
dream
is
does
most
not.
of my family was thrown out of every other country in Europe.
Yes, yes. I mean, and that's the American deal, all right? Like, most of us were
Yep.
thrown out. I mean, the Irish were thrown out of their own. They self-deported basically because they were dying
And
and destitute.
here's the worst part
know?
about it. Ireland produced enough food during the famine to feed the Irish people.
Yes.
The British government took it all.
Yep.
They did. That is exactly what happened. I have
British
read,
government
I
could
have
have done a
done the
lot of
research.
things. Yeah, the British
Yep.
government could have done a lot of things to ameliorate the situation with the famine, and they refused to.
They did
allowed
not, and
50% of the country to die, and 1/3 of that population that remained left.
mhm.
And
The-
to today, the population today in Ireland still has not recovered to a pre-famine level.
no, it is not.
Think about that. Almost 200 years ago, 180 years ago, because
Yep.
there were 2 famines, 1840s and 1860s.
Yes, which is why guys were still coming off the boat and walking right into the hands of Union Army recruiters on the docks. You
Right.
saw it a bit in Gangs of New York.
Thank you,
There was-
Gangs of New York.
But
I need to rewatch
yes,
that movie. I didn't quite understand it in the movie theater.
There
There was a lot going on in it.
There was a lot going on. There was a lot I wish wasn't going on. The whole Cameron Diaz thing with the
That felt a
I mean-
little extraneous, right?
well, her accent was terrible for one thing.
Well, yeah. Well, you're always going to have the
atrocious.
Irish accent. You're always going to have
I'm not-
that.
I don't even think it was that. I'm not even sure what it was. But yeah, but it was, of course, it was a Scorsese movie, so there was definitely going to be some heavy violence. And like 2
John C.
Irish
Reilly's
actors.
in it. You forget he was in a very important, like, serious film, John C. Reilly.
He was in
And
a
then
lot
he
of
was
serious films.
And then he was in Ricky Bobby.
I think up until I mean, in his early career, he was in some heavy movies.
Mm-hmm.
He was in Boogie
Well, so was Owen
Nights.
Wilson. Oh yeah, he
Yeah,
was in
well.
Boogie Nights. My God, yeah, that's right. Like a tragic character too, wasn't he?
No, that was Philip Seymour Hoffman's character, who was a little more tragic.
He was tragic. Well, William H. Macy's character was the
Oh.
most tragic.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. And we're
Yeah.
not here talking about that. But I've only seen that movie once, by the way. Worst
It's
first
not
date
like-
ever.
It-
Worst first date ever.
All right, we're gonna have to put a pin in this and talk about your bad decisions for taking a first date to a movie about 70s pornography.
It was not thought through very well, that's for sure.
No, it was not. All right. But I think one of the reasons why Irish culture, the Irish one, a lot of proof says that the British trying to force the Catholicism out of the Irish is what made them more devout. And then when they came over here, they suffered the same problem. The white Protestants continued to push back against the Irish so much so that up until the early 20th centuries, there were still signs, and even in places like New York and Boston, that said no Irish need apply. And that's why you have such prevalent lineage in police and fire, because the natural born Americans didn't take the civil services very seriously, kind of looked
that's why
down
you
on
had a
them.
bunch of Italian and Irish boxers too at the time.
Right. The Italians also got in, especially into the fire department. But they got into this, both of them got into the civil service. And ironically enough, they kind of competed with each other. So there's not a lot
Hence
of
the
love.
antagonism.
There was not a
By
lot
the
of
way,
love lost, at least
I
100
love the
years ago or
Italians.
so.
I'm just going to go right out in front of it and say that I have Italian family members. You yourself, sir, are Italian. Love Italy, molto bueno.
Yeah, but that's where that's how they became powerful. These Irish cops, they got into the unions. And that's where they started gaining power, and that's where those power bases for
That's right. The
the
public
Democratic
unions were what
Party
did it.
and whatnot built in these Irish communities. They built out of, where could they gain control? Well, they got it through the civil services, through unions, and that's how they then got into politics, because then they could get people into city council to, support their constituency and whatnot. And that's why you have, I'm fifth generation Boston Irish cop. I'm sixth generation New York Italian firefighter. That's where it came from a lot. And you'll
That's
see
where
them
you
in a
get
lot
the
of the
king
major
of Staten
cities.
Island. Yep.
You get Chicago's like that, Philly too.
Can I just raise? Can I
Baltimore.
just raise a point real fast? Just an
Sure.
observation. I took a minority and immigration psychology class in college, and they did analyze the Italian/Irish immigration situation and whatnot. And
Generally
here's the
different
problem.
situations from why they left.
True, very true. The funny part was, and by the way, the movie Brooklyn addresses this pretty well. Delightful movie, by the way, with Saoirse Ronan. Wonderful.
She plays a New York Italian.
No, she doesn't. Oh my God. Are you trying to stoke a fire here? Anyway, the professor, when I pointed out or suggested, I didn't point out, like, one of the reasons that the Irish population was able to kind of turn things around is that they were able to get together as a voting bloc, which, clearly demonstrated in Gangs of New York. And not that Gangs of New York is the definitive history teller of anything, but they used that historical context to show that. And my professor said, no, that's not what happened. And then I'm like, well, what do you mean?
Was this a history professor or a political science professor?
Psychology professor. And he goes,
oh, so he's an
they
asshole.
were white. And that's why they were ultimately accepted. I'm like, oh God.
This guy really didn't quite understand the he doesn't understand the Irish culture then,
No,
and its place in European society.
How hated the Irish culture really was in European society and Italian culture. I mean, which is fucked up, by the way, because think about it. I mean, the Italians were Romans, for Christ's sake.
They were also papists.
The Greeks and the Romans brought together logic into the Western world, and they brought and combined it with the oh gosh, the morality that came out of Judea. You know, it's just but whatever. That was the crux of Western society.
Your
really
psychology
was.
professor is wrong. Okay.
I agree. I disagreed with him. I was kind of shocked about being shut down so quickly, and I didn't say anything after that. But not the first time I had a run-in with a college professor, but the only one that I backed down from. I went after a couple others and I won. So, because they sucked at their job.
Yeah, this guy sounds like he sucked at his. Because that's perpetuating stereotypes.
Yes. So.
Anyway. Yeah. We could go.
Well, okay.
For
All
2
I really
hours
wanted to point out. I just wanted to point out that it was the family bond that kept the Irish heritage going, and which still keeps it going now. Because the answer is,
the heritage is there.
The Irish heritage is important to the family, and and it's important to my family and everything. And it's like, okay, cool, yeah, and you don't see that among a lot of other European descendants in that sense. But it's also muddled in that way where the Irish and the Italians are able to pull it out individualistically, easily.
Well, think of it this way, just from the Italian standpoint. How many times do you go, you know what? We're going to go to that, hey, does everybody want Polish this evening? I'm also Polish. But you know what?
It shows.
Good luck finding, more than, sporadic Polish restaurants.
Yes.
Italian restaurants, they're everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Pizza and things that grew out of that. I mean, in certain places you can find more German restaurants, and don't get me wrong, I like going to a German restaurant because I love me some schnitzel, man.
I would love some good Hungarian. Oh God, what's the word? It's a stew.
Food?
It's a
goulash.
Goulash. Yeah, I would love some Hungarian goulash right about now.
And while there's dishes, and sure, there's the odd restaurant here and there, every place there's an Irish pub and an Italian restaurant.
Yes. Right up there with Chinese restaurants, by the way. American Chinese restaurants, but still,
Yeah.
They figured out the niche. So.
Exactly. And Mexican restaurants.
Yeah.
But they're not Spanish restaurants.
No, they're not. That's the key. And you would argue that's the Spanish influence is gone and the Mexican influence is completely dominant. Like you don't know the Spanish culture. Mexican culture in North America.
And Mexican culture is really very heavy native based too.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. With the way they worship the saints versus the rest of Catholics.
I meant more the food process, but okay.
Oh, but yeah. Well, that's a I'm not going to go too far into it, but I mean, Mexico was a polytheistic Aztecs, polytheistic society. They were able to translate very well into the Catholic religion using saints and everything.
Yeah.
And that's okay. That's okay. That's a good thing. It's not a bad thing.
But I don't know. I mean, sure, there's Cinco de Mayo, right? Which
It's
people like
not
to
celebrated
celebrate.
in Mexico outside of Puebla.
Yes,
Very
it's
well.
really more a specific situation. And St. Patrick's Day in Ireland is different than it is here.
And you're right, actually. Okay, I'll expound on this real fast. You're going to say something. Go ahead. I'm going to stop.
But there, that I think that's where I think part of because of how outlawed the Irish culture was for the Irish in their own country, how it even felt oppressed here, why so many families really held on to it. They assimilated, but they held on to that culture as much as they could. My grandmother was the most superstitious woman I've ever met, and these were mostly Irish superstitions. You don't have a picture of birds in your house. You go out the same door you come in.
The bird thing. Please continue. I had that happen in my life. We had a bird come into our house. We had a bird come into our house. It was a freaking wild bird, and then it flew into a window to get out, thinking that it was open, and it just like busted itself. And my mom freaked out. She's like, "Get it out! Get it out! Get it out!" So I grab a towel and I take it out. I'm like 10, right? I'm 10 years old. I grab this dying bird in a towel, bring it out to the front yard, and the bird then ritualistically dies. And my mother goes, oh, phew. My mother always said that if a bird dies in a house, that means a family member is going to die. Like, again, that's an Irish thing.
Superstition, banshees, all that shit. So, oh, well, I mean, your bird flew into my house.
Outside, from the outside.
No, it literally flew into the house.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Not inside, just into it.
Oh yeah, into the window. Yeah, from outside. Yeah. Banged in and laid down. Oh, I remember recovering poor Chester from your deck. Yes. So cold.
Well, we're eating dinner and we have bay windows around the dinner, and this
is a parakeet, by the way. It's a bright yellow parakeet, not native to southern New England.
And we get up to look.
Everyone.
My dad's like, "Is that a parrot?" I'm like, "Oh, that's Max Parakeet." He got loose. He's like, "Are you shitting me?"
He's been gone for 2
days.
Dude,
we've got your bird.
Yeah. My brother and I rode our bikes over. We rode our bikes over so fast. That poor bird. He was so sweet. We loved him so much.
Oh my God. You never would have gotten that bird back if my grandmother was there, though, I promise you.
I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. God. But, again, I think because it was like people have tried so long and so hard to take away the culture, that's why it's there. And you see that in TV and movies. There's a lot of Celtic influence in fantasy, particularly the mythology.
Mm-hmm.
Tolkien freely admitted that a lot of what he pulled from was from Celtic mythology, the dwarves, the elves, all of that, spirits and whatnot. I'm pretty sure somewhere in Tolkien's Legendarium there's something about banshees or something along those lines. But there's and the Fae folk, and you can see it also very strongly. I think this influence in George R.R. Martin's work in the Song of Ice and Fire, particularly when you talk about the old gods and giants and the children of the forest, which are basically Westerosi Fae folk, the children of the forest. The White Walkers are almost like the embodiments of the Dualan and the Banshees and whatnot. They even have
the Dualan were the
headless riders.
Yeah. Sorry, I was thinking of something
else. The White Walkers, they even like screech.
Yes.
And
Like
basically,
banshees.
if you hear a banshee scream, you or somebody you know is going to die. And if you heard the White Walker screech, and yeah, I believe the map of Westeros is supposed to be like if you like stacked Ireland on top of England.
Yeah.
It kind of looks
Yeah.
like that because it's like
It does
inverted.
kind
And
of.
then
There's a bit of an isthmus between the two land masses in between, but yeah.
right, the neck. And there's dealt with very strange, creepy swamp people. The Reeds and the Crannog men. Crannog, that sounds kind of Gaelic, doesn't it? But then you also like the Northmen. They're all Celts, right?
Yes.
I mean,
Red
at least
hair.
that's kind of.
Well, I mean,
the red hair in the Stark blood
Sarah?
actually came from Catelyn's Tully side. They were the redheads.
I didn't read the books. I don't know.
But like the Northmen, they all worship the old gods, right?
Yes.
And they're
Versus
kind
the
of
seven.
looked down on as,
rubes.
barbaric, and they're got the wrong gods, the old gods, and that's very feels like being looked down on the very posh and more, polished Southerners who worship the faith of the seven, who don't like the worshiping of, trees or a cross, maybe. I don't know. To me, it seems to be very parallel. Like the North is supposed to be like Scots and Irish, right? Especially your Catholics, right? And like the Protestant English are all in the South.
And the Scots and the Irish were never conquered by the Romans.
No,
they actually built a wall. They literally built a wall between Britannia and Scotland. The Romans did. And a wonderful movie called The Eagle, starring Channing Tatum. Very good movie with Donald Sutherland back in 2010. Details him going north of the wall. And it's a great movie. It's wonderful. Like you get to see him interact with the Scots, the Gauls, basically. They were the Gauls at the time. And then you have history, you have civilization in Britannia versus like what? What are you looking at me sideways for?
The Gauls are French, right?
Gaelic.
Yes. Gauls. You said Gauls. Those are French.
Gaelic from Gaul.
Gaul is France.
Yeah, it's all influenced from Gaul to the islands.
There's still a difference.
Well, at that point, yes, absolutely. So, I mean, they called him, I don't know what they called him at that point, but okay. So I'll back away from the Gaul term, but
yeah,
we're talking 2,000 years ago. So whatever.
Good
movie. Good movie. I recommend it.
It was bloody.
The Eagle talks about the lost First Legion or something or whatever. A whole lost Legion. Yeah.
Well, because there's another movie that came out a few years earlier called The Ninth Legion, or excuse me, called The Lost Legion, and it basically talks about a Roman princeling who's basically being spirited out of Rome during the fall of the empire with his, I guess, Briton teacher and a Roman general, and they flee north away from the marauding, the barbarian hordes, and they flee to England to link up with the last legion, hoping that this legion will come back and help them retake Rome. And basically it kind of dovetails into like a pseudo Arthurian origin story.
Mm-hmm.
It was fine. It was fun. It wasn't as brutal as The Eagle, which was a bloody movie.
So you watched that one?
I'd seen The Eagle. Yeah.
You have? Okay. I haven't heard. You and I never mentioned this at all until right now. I haven't heard of anyone that has watched that movie either. So this is interesting.
That's just the kind of movie that would have ended up being watched by like 12 dudes around one small TV in Iraq.
Yeah.
Which is, I'm pretty sure, how I saw it.
Yeah. Good movie. I liked it a lot. I recommend it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So there's definitely that influence. But, I mean, you can see, science, like fantasy definitely is very influenced by Celtic culture, Arthurian myth and legend. Hell, even Star Wars takes from it.
Well, they have to, yeah.
Of course. I mean, you could almost see the Jedi being Irish warrior monks. You know what I mean?
Druids, almost. They were practically druids. They were keepers of the intelligence. Yeah, they were the keepers of the intelligence. They had special powers, which is what the druids were considered. It is central to my book trilogy, by the way.
Before the dark days, before the empire. Boy, can't you just hear that in an Irish accent?
Almost.
Before the dark days, before the British Empire.
Was there an example of any Irish accents that denoted like some kind of like rubery among the population? Wars? Yeah. I don't think there are.
I don't think so. The Irish accent's not one that has really leapt off the page at me. I mean, there's clearly been Irish actors.
The woman who plays Mon Mothma, what's her name?
Mon Mothma?
Mon Mothma. Oh. She's Irish. Shoot, I got to
current or original?
Current. Now I got to double check it because I don't want to.
Genevieve O'Reilly.
One would think.
Australian actress.
Oh, bummer.
Born in Dublin, raised in Adelaide.
Interesting.
So, yeah, that's
these Commonwealth people. They just kind of.
I don't lump the Irish in with the Commonwealth. They'll throw stuff at you.
Mm-hmm. By the way, my phone went from Irish Siri to English United States automatically. Don't know why. I'm kind of pissed because I call her Friday.
Well, now you can call her Wednesday.
Here we go.
Fine, Tuesday, whatever.
Just fixed it.
I am kind of glad that they don't have like space Irish in Star Wars. Because they definitely did it in Star Trek.
With the setting sun as the star.
Sorry, that was Siri. It's Friday. It's Friday. Her name is Friday. Anyway, you like that they don't have a space Irish because just the long ladder.
Star Trek has not done the best with it.
Finnegan!
Yeah, he was kind of a cartoon. Finnegan was a bit of a cartoon. I mean, again, the entire episode was very, what was it, shore leave, where they all go to a pleasure planet that, shows them things that they think of. Like McCoy wants to be a knight and wants to save a damsel in distress and ends up getting stabbed in the heart by a knight. And Kirk, gets into a fist fight with this guy who used to bully him in the academy. Finnegan. I mean, I don't know if it's a stereotype to have a get bullied around by some big Irish kid, but
It's not about
it was
bullying. It's about a rhetorical issue with communication. And all Finnegan wanted was a good Donnybrook with Kirk, and Kirk interpreted it very differently. I'm just saying.
well, then he should have picked a fight with the kid 2 seats over from him, Donald Brooke. He was a bit of a nerd, but he did know judo, so that would have been a good fight. But still, I mean, yeah, I don't know. It was the original series was what it was, but Up the Long Ladder, whew, not a great representation of Irish culture. This was like Darby O'Gill and the Little People if it was written by a 12-year-old who'd been drinking. It was not good. It was not good. Oh, we're gonna go pick up this former Earth colony that just we lost contact with 200 years ago. And oh, by the way, there are a bunch of Irish stereotypes. Maybe that's what happened. We got rid of all the Irish stereotypes and blasted them into space. And the Enterprise just happened to stumble upon them. The men were drunks and ne'er-do-well goof-offs, and the women were all domineering and in your face and whatnot. It was just a really was not good. It was not good. Are you asking me to stop talking, or are you asking me to hold on a second? Okay, you're less than helpful tonight. So not a great, not a particularly great episode. I know it did not sit well with Colm Meaney, and poor Colm, he didn't have really a chance to say anything because he was still a day player back then. Skip ahead 6-7 years to when he's on Deep Space Nine, and what was it? If Wishes Were Horses, and they end up having to just all whatever ex Deus Machina MacGuffin thing for the episode drops. You know, starts pulling kids, things out of Molly's children's book, and they were going to go with a leprechaun, and Colin said, not just no, but hell no. You guys screwed the pooch the last time. None of this shit. I'm done with it. And finally, you know, they're like, oh, okay, so we'll make it Rumpelstiltskin, which was way less culturally offensive.
Rumpelstiltskin.
Better than a
By the way,
leprechaun, at least.
scared the shit out of me. In that episode, it was if wishes were horses, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I wasn't at the computer when you were talking about it. Did you mention it by name?
I did.
Yeah. As soon as he says, well, just I can get you out of this, but I just need a price. Or maybe I just need your daughter or something like that. It scared the crap out of me. Seeing that episode. So you're saying that Colm was like, no, we're not doing a leprechaun here.
Yeah, that was the original plan.
It should have always been a Rumpelstiltskin. What the hell? What the fuck is wrong with them?
Yeah, I don't know, man.
Same writing team that allowed for Code of Honor.
Yes. The plot of the script evolved from the original draft when Michael Piller, co-creator of Deep Space Nine, wanted to differentiate from a Next Generation episode where the Holosuite characters come to life. As such, imagination became the central theme of the episode. Another modification to the original script came from Colm Meaney's objection to the use of a leprechaun due, in his view, to negative connotations and stereotyping of Irish people. This influenced Pillar to use the folk character Rumpelstiltskin instead, during which it was rewritten to become starting point of a new imagination-based storyline. So, there you are.
I like it. I agree with it, and I'm here for it. Actually, I can't even imagine that it would have been a leprechaun in the first place, because Rumpelstiltskin is a specific character who had motivation. That made it stronger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was just not good. Okay. And by that time, Colm Meaney they purposely wanted to take once his character grew on Next Gen, they wanted, when they were creating Deep Space Nine, to bring that character over. He was like somebody they wanted from the get-go. And he agreed to do it, and by that time he had enough pull to say, no, we're not doing this.
Yeah.
Which I respect.
I'm glad he did that.
Me too. I think it would be cheap.
He's celebrated by Ireland as being one of the actors to portray Ireland or Irish people in a positive light.
He got to play a proud Irishman who was a very complex but also very dedicated, passionate family man, brilliant engineer,
soldier,
but also soldier, but also kind of an everyman in the 24th century. Somebody who was critical to the success of, and the influence of galactic events, but also very much still a good representation of a proud Irishman.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for starters, Colm Meaney's a fantastic actor, and he just won a Lifetime Achievement Award from like the Irish Film Association or something like that. I guess Jonathan Frakes sent in a video tribute as well that they played during the ceremony, but it's awesome. He really crushed it. He owned that role, and on St. Patrick's Day, when I'm in a Star Trek mood, I will watch The Wounded with him because he's a central character to it. And one of the underlying themes, of course, is war and loss. And the beautiful Irish traditional song, The Minstrel Boy, is played about a young man going off to war and fighting and ultimately passing in that war. And it was a song that they sang during the Cardassian War. And, you have this beautiful episode anyway, really powerful. But, and there's a gorgeous scene where O'Brien is finally getting through to his former captain and they're singing The Minstrel Boy. And then it kind of goes into a Star Trek instrumental of it. Mm-hmm. And so that became very, I think, identified with the character, so much so that during the everybody's breaking up and going their separate ways montage and what you leave behind, O'Brien's got The Minstrel Boy playing over his montage, which I think
there was an episode. Sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you. I apologize. There was an episode just prior to The Wounded that actually played the theme of The Minstrel Boy as a test. It's true. Well, I can ask AI. Which episode of TNG played the tune Minstrel Boy? And The Wounded. Are there other episodes? Inner Light. What? No. Hold on. Oh, Thematic Echoes. Son of a bitch. It was in another episode. It was. I promise you it was there. As a like a fade out to credits. I promise you it was like 2 or 3 episodes before The Wounded. But whatever.
Okay.
It's there. I'll scan through IMDb and then I'll put it on X to prove everyone that I'm not insane.
Okie dokie. I mean, he was probably the best example of Irish representation in Star Trek.
Well, he was a normal person.
Right.
That's the thing.
He was a normal person who was Irish. Now he was proud. He and Bashir, I think, did fight a battle of the Battle of Clontarf, where he was King Brian Boru. Why do you get to be king? Because I am a direct descendant of Brian Boru, the great High King of Ireland.
This is true. O'Brien of Brian.
Yep.
So.
Yes. And that is some of my Irish ancestry are O'Briens. The other Irish ancestry are the O'Neills. Do you have anything to say about that, my friend?
Prominent character that never talks about his Irish heritage in any way, shape, or form other than drinking beer. That's all he does. He doesn't even say, I'm Irish, I drink beer. Colonel O'Neill, and later General O'Neill from Stargate SG-1 and the movie Stargate. Played by 2 characters, Dennis Quaid and
Kurt Russell.
They're kind of the same person, but yeah, Kurt Russell and what's the other guy?
Richard Dean Anderson.
Thank you. I'm not
This
good.
is
I'm
your
terrible. I'm terrible with names, dude. I'm terrible with names. Anyway, I mean, really, there's not a lot to say other than O'Neill and Teal'c is the Jaffa from the Goa'uld. He's the Apophysis First Prime, and he defects and he comes over to the Earth side, and he actually talks about reading all of Earth's religious texts. He read the Bible, he read the Quran, he says he read the Torah, but literally reading the Bible will give you the Torah as well. So,
yes.
So he's like, oh, have you not read the Bible, Colonel O'Neill? And O'Neill's like, I skipped through it. So,
yeah.
I mean, who among us has been able to read the Bible all the way through? So, he's a good example of a good leader that you don't agree with, I know, but he's a good leader. He cares for it's writing loopholes, by the way. So, but he cares.
Jack O'Neill?
Yeah, Jack O'Neill.
I don't think he's a bad leader. It was really hard to get past that one problem.
I know, I get it. But, they really show that he was like no man left behind. And then, in one episode where his team was on a planet with near-Earth asteroids, which wasn't on Earth, but it was on a different planet, but near-planet asteroids that ultimately were going to be landing. He sent his crew through first, and then the Stargate got annihilated by an asteroid impact. So he was stuck there for 6 months. He struck up a relationship, and we talked about this with Dave from the Sci-Fi guys. And then at the end of the episode, it turns out that the woman that he had the relationship with says goodbye and then turns and holds her belly, is signifying that. You're right there?
Do you have music or something playing in the background?
No, that's all you, dude.
That's weird.
I barely touched my desktop because I can't. So
Sorry. There was something playing in the background and I couldn't figure out what it was. But keep going.
That's all right. So at the end, when he says goodbye, that it's time to go back, that he was able to dig out the Stargate or something, she turns away and holds her belly, indicating that, oh, she's pregnant with Jack's child. And these are humans that were placed there by the Goa'uld long ago. They're all humans. Humans are all over the galaxy. Sure. In this universe. So very sad story, very interesting story. I like it. But nothing particularly Irish about it. They really don't go into any Irish culture as far as I can remember.
Sure.
But the Asgard revere O'Neill so well that they anointed their most prized and most advanced starship after him. They name it the O'Neill, and then it's promptly destroyed to get rid of the replicators. And by the way, Jack O'Neill's not even there to see it. It's just Daniel Jackson, who was brought by the Asgard. So yeah, and then O'Neill is told later, wait, there was a ship named after me and you destroyed it? Like, so, but yeah. I mean, you could say technically he's an Irish portrayal. But I wouldn't say he's like technically Irish in that sense. But you know, it's American. We're Americans. America made St. Patrick's Day what it is because of the fondness for the Irish culture. So, which is what I wanted to point out earlier.
Probably also because of how many Irish descendants there really are over here.
Well, that's the key. So, I mean, and there are millions of Irish descendants versus 3 million Irish proper. So,
one of the largest diasporas in human history.
And again, still not recovered from the famine.
Well, they've spread around the world pretty well, and many of us are descended of them, and quite a lot of us are proud of that. And I've enjoyed celebrating my various heritages, and you know, I have this particular culture has a focused holiday to really do. The Italians kind of built a lot around Columbus Day, but you know, a lot of people are stamping on Columbus Day so hard. I feel it kind of yanks the rugs out from under the Italian community. Not that I.
Well, there is.
I don't. I get why celebrating Columbus per se, maybe not the best thing in the world, but
Columbus. No, I will stand by Columbus Day. Columbus Day needs to be celebrated in every way, shape, and form. I'm not going to shy away from that. Columbus reshaped the entire existence of the world. Yes, he did bad things, but it reshaped it for the better. Because can you imagine a world where there is no United States?
Not while I'm on my watch, man. Not on my watch.
Exactly. So there you go. There you go.
That being said, you know, I enjoy seeing positive portrayals of Irish, you know, characters in fiction and whatnot. I mean, hell, just look at Blue Bloods. It's not science fiction, but you followed an Irish Catholic family of cops and lawyers in New York City for 14 seasons, and people are pissed it went off the air.
Yeah.
A lot of people are
14
pissed.
years.
And people,
Oh my gosh.
but one of the things that is very essential, and the cases are different every week, and there's character development, of course, but the thing that set it aside that's different is that this family gets together every week. They go to church and they go and have Sunday dinner as a family. And it feeds into the however many fifth or sixth generation Irish cops in New York City. Okay, but they all got Irish names.
Mm-hmm.
The cops, they're district attorneys, they're it's part of the fabric, and so is also the faith and the family that goes with it, and you see that a lot in portrayals of the Irish in fiction. What you don't see from Miles O'Brien is faith per se, but you do see pride in his culture. In The Wounded, he and Keiko are taking turns preparing traditional meals for each other. She's preparing a traditional Japanese breakfast. He's preparing a traditional Irish breakfast with capers and potatoes, and it's great.
It's cute. It was
I
cute
liked
to see.
it.
Yeah.
But he
even as a 10-year-old, it was cute to see.
Right. But he's not. Sure. Do you see him? When he's at the bar, is he drinking an ale? Sure. But I mean, I think it's more that he's kind of a workman quality, lunch pail drinking a beer guy, not like sipping fine wine, cognac kind of thing. I mean, all you have to do is look at these memes right here. They're drinking beer out of mugs. I don't know.
Which Julian is doing more out of courtesy, I believe, than
Yes.
than
Yes,
preference.
True.
But
And one of the things that I liked about early season O'Brien is that he rolls up the sleeves, right? That's a man who's going to work, right? I don't know. And it turns out he's the most important man in Starfleet history.
Mm-hmm. Well, probably the biggest magician ever. To be honest, he turned the Defiant into a working vessel. Like Starfleet engineers pushed they set aside the Defiant, going, it's overpowered, under engineered. We just can't deal with it. And then O'Brien's like, let me work on it.
They didn't roll up their sleeves. If they rolled up their sleeves, it would have got done.
Yes.
I got to tell you, you've got a positive representation. Of course, everybody who follows this podcast knows how much we love Miles O'Brien. Okay. I'm sure my distant descendant in the future is going to do a great job working on Deep Space Nine. That's what these videos told me.
Mm-hmm.
But, it is the fact that he's kind of he's still basically a mechanical genius, but he's also a lunch pail guy is just kind of refreshing to see.
Well, you haven't seen something like that in the Star Trek universe in and of itself.
Scotty was a little bit like that.
A little bit. Yes.
But he still was third in command of the Enterprise.
Right. Right.
O'Brien was an NCO. He'd get his hands dirty. He'd yell at you. That's the guy. But still, it's every much that kind of, and I'm not going to say it's a stereotype, but there is that kind of like, they give you the feel of the salt of the earth, kind of hard-working Irish guy, But but it's a blue collar thing too, right? Somebody who can be outstanding at their job but they're working, they're grinding, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you know, if you grow up watching TV and movies before the 70s, right? A lot of Irish actors are caricatures. Now, you watch
By
John
the way, I
Wayne
want to bring up
movies.
one more show before we
Sure.
sign off. So just FYI.
You watch some of the John Wayne movies and you're like, ugh. I mean, yeah, all the NCOs are Irish. Makes sense. That was true in the cavalry. But did you have to make so many of them fucking drunks? I mean, Victor McLaughlin played a fucking drunk in like all the John Ford trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
great
it's
actor
funny and all, but come on, guys.
Speaking
The Quiet
speaking
Man
of
was
drunks,
a great movie. It's actually still the Irish don't hate that movie as much as they hate the Irish representation in many of the other John Ford movies.
Well, speaking of drunks, I mean,
like John Ford is Irish.
True. Well, and there you go. He gave in. But speaking of drunks, Dr. Drew says that the Irish are alcoholics because they're survivors. And it was a way to survive the awfulness that they endured. Yes, it killed them prematurely, but allowed them to keep their lives going early on in life.
Really? That's Dr. Drew, so he's just going to lean into the stereotype?
I'm not saying that he approves of it. I'm saying that he's explaining why the culture leaned the way it did.
Are we really saying that the culture leaned into it? Or is that just how they've been painted?
No, they leaned into it. They leaned into it, dude. They did. Are you fucking kidding me? They got pubs on every other corner. Jesus.
Like the Irish pub though is also its social center.
Yeah, and it translated over to America, and people in America use those same pubs to drink 4 to 5 liters a week of liquor. And before the temperance movement happened, or when the temperance movement started to occur. So, and by the way, since Prohibition ended, America's taste for liquor has not recovered since before. We don't drink nearly as much. I know, but we don't drink nearly as much now as we used to before Prohibition as a country.
Well, also look at the timeline. More and more indoor plumbing, better quality of water.
True.
Other sources of fluid intake have come into more popularity.
And also other sources of alteration. So
true.
So that being said,
like, the public house is what the pub stood for, is also a center of, there was political debate, they would hold, music, poetry, debates, everything, it's kind of like a central part of, an Irish, particularly Irish, but also English and Scottish, the British Isles. The pub is still a very big center of not only the social, but also the, civic scene.
Yes, and always has been, always will be in some form or another. I do want to bring in one last Irish reference in a fantasy show.
By all means.
So, I mentioned to our dear friend Dave from the Sci-Fi guys to maybe look into the Dayhawk storyline of Hercules and Xena. from the late 90s, early 2000s. Are you familiar with said storyline?
No, I watched Hercules more, and then it kind of got into me going to college, and then I wasn't really watching.
I gotcha. No problem. So, long story short, Dayhawk is a god, one of the old gods that was forgotten and ignored. In Xena, he was introduced as like the one god, which was implied as the god of the Israelites. And then it didn't happen. Dayhawk had impregnated Gabrielle, her sidekick, and
I know who Gabrielle is.
Yeah, she had given birth to a child named Hope, and Hope was a terrible person, just one of the worst. But was also played by the same actress when she accelerated her growth. Anyway, that being said, Dayhawk is around, and in Hercules, Aeolus, Hercules' sidekick, is killed in season 5. And Hercules, after losing his confidence following Aeolus' death, washes up on the shores of Ire in Ireland. It's Ire, and the local druids believe that he's their prophesized chosen one, destined to protect them from an evil demigod, Bragh, and the horned god Cernunnos. Hercules, still reeling from grief, reluctantly takes the role, beginning his journey in this Celtic-inspired land. The episode introduces Morrigan, a fierce warrior whom I loved. She was fantastic. Who starts as an antagonist enforcing Cernunnos' will, but later becomes an ally. The music leans heavily in fiddles and flutes, evoking traditional Irish sounds. The significance is this marks Hercules' arrival in Ire and sets up the cultural shift from Greek to Celtic mythology, with misty landscapes and stone circles replacing the usual Greek vistas. Episode 5 of season 5, so 2 episodes later, Render unto Caesar. I'm just going to reference this one real fast. Hercules remains in Ire, facing a new threat as Julius Caesar, played by Carl Urban, invades with Roman forces. Xena had run into Carl Urban / Caesar earlier. But Hercules rallies the locals, including Morrigan, to fight back. The episode pits Roman military might against Celtic mysticism, with Hercules training the druids and warriors to defend their land. It's a clash of cultures, with Caesar's arrogance contrasting with the earthy spirituality of Ire. Significance. This episode deepens Hercules' role as a protector of Ire, blending historical Roman elements with the show's fantasy take on Ireland. And there's 3 other episodes about it, but it's a story arc, basically. But I do love Morrigan.
Who does he take the place of? Like Finn McCool or somebody like that?
No. He's his own self. Be true. So, to his own self, he be true. He be's true. So, but yeah, I know. I mean, and the Celts would probably like reinterpret him as someone else, like potentially as Cuchulainn, or whatnot. But Cuchulainn required a sword. So
Hercules didn't. He just had tickets to the gun show.
Right, exactly. So, or as other Celts would say, Cuchulainn, as opposed to Cuchulainn. So Cuchulainn, as was said in oh my gosh, Disney's Gargoyles, because
well, they were Scottish, weren't they?
No, Goliath and Elise with Bronx traveled to Ireland and battled Banshee.
But weren't they?
And Colm Meaney was in that episode as the father of a no do gooder son, who was a descendant of Cuchulainn, as they said it in that episode.
No, I meant wasn't their original castle in Scotland?
Yes, Edinburgh.
That's what I thought.
It was the original Edinburgh Castle, to be honest with you. It was weird. No, it wasn't. I don't think it was the original. Edinburgh Castle is huge. But yes, it was in Edinburgh.
Yes, quite. Well, and you see, that's the thing, though, right? So, in some ways, the wisdom of the superstition and wisdom of the Irish do have a tendency to pop up from time to time in TV and movies. It's definitely some mystery that comes with the mythology. Superstition, there's always, the cross, a curse on you stuff, but
may centipedes fill your bed. Not
all the Irish blessings and sayings. It's because there's a lot of creepy shit going on over there. You need these curses, you need the blessings to defend against these curses.
Well, as I mentioned with Scary Fairy Godmother, I mean there is a root to all of these thought processes,
Yes.
So but yeah,
and that's where we are.
Well, I'm just saying, Irish culture is pretty endemic to the American society, and it's not the American society, which is proper, because there is no one culture that is endemic or proper to the American society, but it's a fun one to have. And
certainly is.
I appreciate it a lot. And I will say that Hercules and Xena really captured my interest into Celtic folklore because of the way they dealt with the myths and the stories thereof. So, and I love the music. The music was just purely Celtically based with all the drums and whatnot. So, as this music is playing,
you get someone with a penny whistle and a bawrin going, and you got me. Well, sounds like we're at the end, aren't we?
So that's the ultimate end. So you guys keep dreaming, we'll keep working. I am P.S. McKay, Erin go Bragh. Happy St. Patrick's Day. You guys keep dreaming, we'll keep working.
And folks, this is DT Calfman. And up on the high ground, I'm playing the High Kings. May it be a half an hour in heaven before the devil knows you're dead. May the road rise up to greet you. And happy St. Patrick's Day.
Those Sci-Fi Guys is an independent broadcast by Alpha Sci Productions, produced by DT Cabman and P.S. McKay. Fiddle DD music courtesy of Silverman Sound. For more information on upcoming episodes, follow P.S. McKay on X at PS McKay or go to thosescifiguys.com for past episode information. You can now find us on Spotify, so head on over there for our latest episodes, but don't worry, you can find us on Apple still. We are also on Rumble. You can find us on YouTube with live video podcasts and Facebook. So be sure to leave a like and a comment and let us know how you go on.